Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning and welcome. It's Nurse Richard, the Wax Wizard. Thanks for joining me. This is a long episode, I've got to warn you now. If you've not got 20 minutes spare, then maybe go and look at one of the shorter ones, because this goes on a little bit, but I think you'll find it very interesting anyway. And I'll try and not bore you for 20 minutes, but there's not 20 minutes worth of stuff to tell you about this ear. So as usual, I'll go on about some other stuff, which I think you'll find interesting as well, actually, when I tell you about who this gentleman is. And I promised I'll give him a shout out, but not very many are happy to be identified, but this chap is, and I will get onto why a bit later on. So this gentleman came to see me, and he'd been having problems since about 14-15 months ago. He had problems with his ears in the past, and he went to see somebody, not me, I hasten to add, and they irrigated the ears, or syringed them, a lot of people call it around here. And it wasn't, I assume it wasn't done with an actual syringe that you'd literally pump in. That's been banned here for quite a long time. It would have been with an electronic irrigator, which I do use, and in the right circumstances, perfectly safe to use, as long as you don't. There's no reasons why you shouldn't use them, because there are some infections, grommets, perforations, either old on you, as you can see here, can't you? Now, this gentleman did have grommets when he was much younger. We're talking about maybe 40 years ago. He had grommets. Now, what are grommets? They are little tubes that are inserted through the eardrum to allow either the pressure to equalise itself, or to allow the fluid to pass through from the middle ear to the outer ear. If the tubes here between your nose and the back of your ear are a little blocked for whatever reason, and this gentleman had those. Now, that's one of the contraindications why you probably shouldn't irrigate an ear, because that part of the eardrum that it'll have been literally cut, a little cut made, and then this tube inserted through it, obviously will be a little bit weaker because it's been operated on in the past. Now, whether the practitioner who did this knew that or asked them, I couldn't answer for them. I'm not going to lie. It's on my consent form, and every time I do consider using the irrigator, it's obviously one of the questions that you ask them. You're looking for any reasons why it's not safe to do. So whether they did that or not, I don't know. I would assume not, because every practitioner should know who does irrigation that you probably shouldn't if someone's got a history of grommets. And so he remembers at the time, he said he could hear better after it, but he said halfway through the procedure, as the water jet was shooted into his ear, he felt a really sharp pain, and he said his ear's never been right since. Now, if you saw the shot beforehand, you'll get to see it a lot clearer. I start working nearer and on the eardrum in a bit. You'll get to see what it's done. So it's basically punctured his eardrum. He's put a hole in it, and he's had ordinarily. It's not a huge perforation. Little perforations tend to heal up in a relatively short space of time, 8-10 weeks, something like that. That can vary, obviously, but this one hasn't, and it's been there, a good 14-15 months. So the likelihood is it's not going to heal if it's not healed by now. So I've referred him via his doctor to ear, nose, and throat. Chances are you probably need a repair of that, typically a graft. So they'll place something over the top of that, and hopefully it will stop all this, because all he's got in his ear canal here, this is a lot of it's dead skin, but it'll be like residue that's seeping out and mucus that's seeping out through the perforation, and then drying itself and caking on to the ear canal. And these are particularly difficult to remove. Would be easy with oil, but because he's got a perforation in there, you don't want to go squirting anything inside it. So you've just got to persevere with it and do it dry, so to speak. So if anyone's shouting, why do you not put oil in? Why do you not put oil in? To dribble straight into his middle ear. That's not where you want it. That would be quite unpleasant. But look at this lovely peel here. But it was a difficult procedure. His other ear is in this as well. after this. It's totally different, very, very straightforward, like I hoped this one was going to be. But as soon as I saw it, I knew we were in for a bit of a battle. But it makes for an interesting video. If you are watching, the gentleman who's here this is, then hello to you. I hope you enjoy. I know he enjoyed watching it while I was doing it. Hopefully he enjoys this as well. And hopefully I don't bore you as well going on about it for 20 minutes. But but he will understand how difficult it is and how weird it is just when you're recording videos and you're just speaking essentially to yourself in a room on your own. Because this gentleman has his own YouTube channel. And let me tell you a little bit about him first. Because it was really interesting. Because I asked him, I said, I'm going to need to refer you to your GP. He said, well, I've got a GP. I often have temporary GPs. And when we got into the whys and wherefores about that, it turns out this chap lives on a narrow boat, which is what they call, it's a canal boat basically. The really long, thin boats that lots of people live on or use them for leisure around here, because there's a big canal network around here and pretty much all over England and Wales and Scotland and Ireland. And I think there's about 4,500 miles worth of canal network. So you can get pretty much all around the country. Almost every town has got its own canal, either going through it or nearby it. And I will bore you with a bit of stuff about that in a minute. But the reason why is, I said he doesn't mind too much being identifying himself because he has his own YouTube channel. So I said I'll give him a little plug because he's only got a few followers. I think it's about 200, and I'm sure it would make his day if you all went to his channel and had a quick look at some of his videos there. I've actually had a look at a couple, fell into a bit of a wormhole, and so I said I'd give me a shout out. I'll put a link above me which will link you to his channel, and I'll also put maybe on YouTube this works, you can put a card at the end of the video with a link to a specific video, so I'll try and do that, but I'll also put his channel on the description, so if you're watching on TikTok or Facebook, you'll be able to watch it. To get it, just click on that link there and tell him I sent you. Tell him Nurse Richard sent you. I'm sure he'll be very grateful. But it's a really interesting channel actually, because it takes you through a lot of England's green and pleasant land from the viewpoint of a canal, and it's like life on the canal, because he lives on the canal on this boat. It's a lovely boat as well. Seen it very long, and there's quite a big canal community around here. The reason is because I think the Romans first possibly brought canals over here. I might be wrong on this, I'm not expert on it, but I've had a quick read. I think the Romans brought them over on here, but I think they mostly used it for irrigation purposes, to spread the water out, connect rivers and what have you. But then they really took off, and they built a lot of them, especially around here, to help with the Industrial Revolution, which was particularly big where I am in the north of England, in the northwest of England, because all the goods that they had to ship all over the place, the road network wasn't really up to it, the rail network wasn't even there, and so they used to transport things around on large barges and long canal boats. And so there's a big one running right through the town I live in, because they often join cities. And the one I'm in, it joins the cities of Liverpool, which is obviously on the coast, to Leeds on the in the central north part of England, and we're right in between Manchester and Liverpool is where I am. And the canal goes straight through our town, or the cut, as a lot of people call it. Going for a walk down the cut is what a lot of people will say, and they call it that because it's literally a cut in the land. No other complicated reason than that. But yeah, every town around here has got a canal. It leads to some very nice, pleasant walks. It does lead to a few interesting sayings as well, apart from going for a walk down cut. They used to, because the early ones, they weren't powered. They used to have well, I suppose they're called cart horses. That would be the horses would be on they'd call it the horse path on the side, along the side of the canal, and they'd be attached to the boat, and they would be pulling the boat. So they were used quite a lot, and then obviously motors came along, and the horses were made redundant. But that's why there's a lot of nice paths along the side of the canal that you can go for a nice walk around here, because that was the path for the horses. And they used to transport all sorts of things. You know, it's why when you'll go down some of these canals, they've always got lots of warehouse and old mills at the side of them, because they literally load directly from the warehouses onto the barges, then they transport things all over the country. There's a lot of cotton mills around where I grew up and still live. And along the canal, there's just loads and loads and loads of old cotton mills. Some are used for others, some are just abandoned. Because that was a very popular trade around here. My grandma worked in a cotton mill. You're probably wondering why I just disappeared then, why it came back. Reason is, this video is that long, I reached the recording limit of the time that I'm allowed for some storage on the particular device. I'm recording this on a different camera than I used to. I didn't realise I hadn't set the recording limit to only limit it to about 10-minute videos. So I think I was just telling you that the grandma used to work in cotton mills, and it's a reason why she went deaf probably. Had hearing trouble all her life, and it gave her terrible tinnitus. Very, very noisy environments they were, with the sounds of the machines. No such thing as health and safety back then. There really wasn't. So I don't know what else I can tell you about the Canal network that I've bored you about already, but go and check out this gentleman's channel. I know he would appreciate that. It is, like I said, it is a big, it's always a big part of the communities, particularly around here in the north of England. Used to use a lot of it to transport the coal, because it's a big coal mining community. Well, it was back in the day around here. All the towns around here were pretty much built on coal, a lot of them. But it led to a few sayings that still we use today, and sometimes the youngsters even don't know where it came from. Because one of the most common ones is if you're talking about somebody who you're, how can I put it, who you're not necessarily attracted to, and someone says, "Oh, do you like that? Do you like that man over there?" And she'd say, "I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot barge pole," and they wouldn't really know where that saying came from. But a barge pole was, the barge is another word for the boat, and they literally had these really long poles, and if you were getting too close to the side of the canal, you'd use this to steer yourself, to stop yourself bumping into it. And there's still a lot of the thing that fascinates me most about them is the lock network. Now, if you don't know what a lock is, it's what's used to, obviously the ground isn't always level, is it? Across rivers, and in a natural river you'd find a waterfall, or it would just stop because it can't go uphill. So in order to counteract that, the engineers, when they built the canals, they built these things called locks, which is basically, you get two, it's like a lift for boats, but the boats aren't lifted up artificially. What they do, there's these two big doors, like swing doors, and they would either drain it or fill it up from one side or the other side to lower or higher the level, and the boat would come into the lock at a certain level, then they'd drain it from one side, and the water level would go down if the canal's going downhill, and then the boat would slowly sink, and then they'd open up the other side, and it would be at the same level as it was on the other side. So it's like steps. In fact, there is a really famous one, I can't remember what it's called, so don't ask me about it. Well, I think they call it something steps because there's like 30 or 40 odd locks that just going up and up and up and up this hill. It must take forever to get up and down in these boats. So, but the canal is a bit of bane in my life when I'm driving around, actually, because there's quite a few swing bridges. In fact, one right round the corner from my house, and a swing bridge just opens up like that. Actually, it used to be like that. It's now just one big one that goes up like that. And when a boat gets there, it opens it up. You just literally press a few buttons or dial somebody up, and the automated system lifts this thing up. Sometimes they forget to shut it and leave it up, and you're stuck there trying to get from one turn to the other. But it takes forever when you're sat in this traffic and you're in a rush, and you can just see these boats coming past at like 2 miles an hour, and you're sitting there and you can't think, oh, come on, get on with it. Come on, I'm in a rush, I'm late for work. I suppose they've got to get there. They've got to get to the other side one way or the other, haven't they? Do it at weekends though. Don't do it when I'm trying to get to work. Anyways, you can see we're nearly approaching the end of this. It's been tedious, I know it has, which is why I've been talking about other stuff, because you've been watching me battle and argue with this debris here that I've been trying to peel away. And it's a bit like chewing gum, the last few bits that are really difficult to remove. It wasn't the easiest ear to gain access to from what I remember. So this is all the fine-in tube, this. So don't forget, when you're looking at something like this, don't forget it's a highly magnified picture of what's actually going on. If you want to know the proportions of things that were in there, have a look at the size of maybe your little fingernail, and that's the space that you're seeing in there that we're having to work inside via some bends. It's really not easy. And I think I'm close to getting the very last bit that I think is safe to anyway. Now, there was a bit that was, there may have been a bit on the drum, but I wasn't sure if it was scarring or dead skin. I did hover over it and touch it a couple of times just to see if it came away easily. It didn't, a couple of bits did. But to be honest, you don't want to be mauling about with an eardrum that's got a hole in it, ideally, unless you absolutely have to. So I stayed down there long enough anyway, and I got as much as I possibly could. But obviously it didn't fix any of the issues that this gentleman had. It cleaned it up a lot, don't get me wrong, and he said it felt better. But his other ear, actually, that you're going to see in a minute, was more blocked than this. Obviously the reason why I couldn't hear very well in this one was because of this. So I'm just going to have a little go at that little flap at the bottom there. And I was hoping that maybe that would start to lift a bit above it. I don't think it did. But you should only really stay around someone's eardrum for a short period of time. You don't want to be hanging around there. If something comes, it comes. If it doesn't, no biggie. But if you think what this ear looked like beforehand and what it looks like now, I know there is a little flap at the roof of the ear canal. That's a really difficult angle to get the suction tube in that. It's really not important, that bit anyway. I wasn't really entertaining that. Maybe if you could do a handstand and then I could perform it while it was upside down, then it'd be a lot easier to get to, but it's really not. So you can see I'm just gently kissing against the surface of that just to see if anything happens. Not much did, so that's why I left it. I think we've got more than enough here anyway. Yeah, just have one more go. And I don't think there'd be any benefit at all to carry on with that. Not with an eardrum that already looks like that, but when you look at it coming out, it looks a lot better than it did to start with, and that's the main thing. So this was his other ear. Looks like a very normal, healthy earwax. So I was quite happy to see this when I looked in the other one. I thought, oh yeah, something normal to get my teeth stuck into. Thankfully it didn't take too long. And full-size tube this. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this. Like I said, it was a bit of an epic. I hope I haven't bored you. I've forgotten dad jokes as well. If anyone's watching who hasn't seen many videos before, if I could have passed a good 5 minutes with them as well, couldn't I? I am sorry. We normally put a couple of jokes in because it cheers everybody up from my joke book. Anyway, let's just have a couple because I know we're near the end of this procedure. I was wondering, why does a frisbee appear larger the closer it gets? And then it hit me. That's good. I told my wife she'd drawn her eyebrows on too low. She just sat and scowled at me. Okay. Last week a German Shepherd defecated in front of me on my lawn, and yesterday he brought his dog along. Went to the doctor, said, "Have you got anything for wind?" Gave me a kite. This morning I tried to catch some fog. Missed. Oh dear me. I can't read that, that's too bad. Why? I don't understand this. Why is 68 afraid of 70? Because 69 and 70 got into a fight in 71. Oh, I get it. It's just not very good. I know this procedure's finished. I'll just give you one more. I'll try and find a good one. I went to the store to pick up 8 cans of Sprite. But when I got home, I realised I'd only picked 7 up. It's a good one to finish off. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Apologies for rambling on. I know it was a long one, but it is what it is. It takes as long as it takes, and I know some of you like the longer, more difficult ones. But for now, take care of yourself, and go and check out my friend's channel. It's called Narrowboat Two Little Ducks, by the way, I forgot to mention, but I'll put some links in there in the description, and maybe a couple of cards up, and hopefully a video at the side of me. But for now, take care of yourself, and I'll see you later. Ta-da.